Fringe listeners, if you are not familiar with the show Being at Work, it is the highest listened show, highest ranked show on People Forward Network. We celebrate Andrea Butcher, who is the host of Being at Work, for her incredible dedication to podcasting. She literally puts out an episode every day. Life goals for podcasters. So we picked out one of Andrea and our favorite episodes with Aaron Abell. This is fantastic. I'm pretty sure you're going to love it. Don't forget, if you want more Andrea, go follow her show, Being at Work. You get a little dose of Andrea and insights and great leaders every single day of the week.
Hey, Being at Work listeners, welcome back to another episode. You can probably hear the emotion in my voice. I actually thought, you know what, I should probably wait to record this intro when I'm not so emotional, but I want you to hear the emotion in my voice, and I want to do it now while it's fresh, because this episode is so important to me. If you are a regular listener of this feed, you know that my number one leadership tip is always figure out who you are and be more of that. And today's guest has a story that highlights the importance of doing this work. As you'll hear, he talks about a pivotal moment in his life, 2013, 2014, as a metamorphosis. It's such a process, and I've learned so much through his story. Aaron Abell is the head of America's HR at Southco. But what you really need to know about Aaron is, even though he was living this comfortable life, he knew there was more, and he paid attention to that. He explored it. He tried different things. I love it when he says, well, I'd always done everything I was supposed to do, and I was still feeling like something was missing. Yeah, listen in as we talk about identifying what motivates and drives you, and the magic that happens in relationships and in life when you become more of who you are. Check it out.
As we were preparing for this, right, we talked about intentions, and I hope my story helps someone really think about who they are and inspires them to be their whole authentic self. You know, my life has been a journey, but I think it's fabulous. And again, as we were preparing for this, you know, I think I said something like, I'm living the dream now. And, you know, the only limits we have are what we place on ourselves. And so, you know, think about all the possibilities and embrace those and go after them. So just a little bit about me. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, although I thought I wanted to go to law school. And I'm so happy I kind of took a different path. I was connected with some really amazing professionals through a nonprofit in my hometown. And that led me to an internship in HR, which opened doors. I started at a company called Hillenbrand, which at that point was going through quite a lot of change. So I think the week that I was interviewing, they announced that the company was going to split into two. So Hillrom and Batesville Casket and Hillenbrand Inc. So I came in on the ground floor, not knowing anything about anything, and just exploring HR. And then kind of that started this whole journey for me. After I graduated from Wabash College, it turned into a full-time career, helping kind of rebuild the HR function as a new entity, but with a vision to the future. And Hillenbrand during those years was really taking a step back and saying, what are we good at, and what are the areas that we can add value? And I think that really paralleled a lot of kind of what I was thinking about of, you know, what do I want to do in the professional world? How did I want to kind of leave my mark on this world? And it was a really amazing time of learning and growth. So I was at Hillenbrand for a number of years in HR, but then other assignments in corporate strategy and lean business, and that mindset of always improving, always trying to be kind of a better self really was kind of implanted on me very early. Around 2014, though, I was coming out of a long-term relationship that wasn't successful, but I learned a lot about myself. I came out to my family and started to live more authentically, and that led to kind of this snowball of a number of different things, which ultimately led me to leave Hillenbrand and through a mentor move to Philadelphia. So it was this really kind of cool time where I actually took some time off. I think I was a little burnt out trying to be someone who maybe I wasn't really at my core, and took some time to just kind of rebuild and reintroduce me to myself. And that was amazing. And so when I moved to Philly, I felt refreshed and like a new person. And I really was, right? I was able to kind of shed who I thought I was supposed to be, and become who I really am. And not kind of wearing any mask, but really being my true authentic self. And once I moved to Philadelphia, I was helping a company, FMC, carve out the Alkali division for sale, and so it became a lot of the similar things to what Hillenbrand went through of like, what are we really good at? How do we embrace those things? How do we minimize the things we're not so good at and maximize on our strengths? And so very formative. And even now, as I think about the work that I'm doing at Southco, it's much the same, right? We're going through kind of growing pains and need to level up on a lot of things. And so it's, how do we embrace the past and really think about what has been so amazing over the years that really are our value adds, and what our customers and end users appreciate about our products, which is all engineered access hardware. So it's how people interact with the physical world. And so I think it's a really great idea to just kind of pause for a moment and reflect on, what has been kind of the core in the past. Really assess, is that authentic or not, and then kind of move forward. Yeah, I think that's been so fundamental to who I am, and how my career and my life has evolved. And I just feel like now my relationships, both at work and at home, are so much more. I think if you'd ask my team, I do lead with, I believe, that authenticity, and it really starts with empathy, right? But I think for me, it was starting with that own empathy for myself. Of right, I didn't have to fit a specific mold. That I could be the person I wanted to be. I could do whatever I wanted to do, and that was okay. And it was more than okay. It was actually, what the world wants and needs. And I think that light bulb came on. It was a really, really powerful moment for me.
Yeah, you called that time frame a metamorphosis, and now I understand more why. I mean, you listened to your internal nudging around what was really important to you and what you really wanted, and you had the courage to acknowledge that, which is so hard.
It is hard, but I think the alternative is just exhausting, right? Like always trying to wear a mask, always trying to fit a mold. It takes so much from you. And I think, even if I kind of fast forward in time and think about how the pandemic kind of reshaped how we all think about our mental health, how we think about our relationships, I think had I not gone through that metamorphosis, I think the pandemic would have been so much more difficult, right? And even now, just thinking about my team, both my own team in HR, but my broader team at the company, I feel like everyone is going through something. And I think you understand that kind of intellectually, but now I'm feeling it a little bit more, right? There's not a single person in kind of my direct circle that doesn't have something going on with themselves, with a child, with a romantic partner, with a parent. There's just so much happening in the world, and it can be really, it can be petrifying sometimes to think about all the things that are happening. But being true to yourself, and understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, and then allowing your circle to build to support those strengths and weaknesses, and to help each other out, makes those terrifying times a little bit more bearable. And I think that that's so critical, and I'm so happy that I had that courage in 2014 to really say, this isn't really me. It kind of feels a little draining, and to kind of try new things, and to take that step out of my comfort zone, that I think really positioned me to be in a much better place through the pandemic and beyond. And again, I'm very blessed now to be able to have that balance. But I mean, I think that those same things also manifest in leadership, right? So we put a lot on ourselves each and every day through the pandemic, through just the day to day life. It's very easy to internalize those things, and I think we also need to remind ourselves that we're still human, right? We still we're not a machine, and sometimes you do have to take a step back, right? We can't always work, nonstop and expect that not to catch up to us sometimes. I think it's difficult when you're kind of more type A and kind of self-motivated to take time to do nothing, but that is restorative. And that's when you really do kind of reconnect with your inner self and are able to just think about and process things. And I think that time is so critical.
I'm just so grateful for your story. I'm sitting here just feeling a little bit overwhelmed and even emotional because I talk so much about figuring out who you are and being more of that. And I noted that in the intro. And you're describing a process for doing that, like doing the hard work, doing the hard thing, having the courage to be honest about who you are. And I so appreciate your earlier comment about how exhausting it was trying to be something that you aren't. I think, Aaron, that is such a relatable feeling. I can't imagine a single person listening to this that can't relate to that. Like the pretending, the like just going along with. I don't want to make waves. I want to make sure everybody's okay. I want to please. I mean, I do think that's part of our human nature to connect and not want to upset. But it got to a point for you, like you could not, like you had to. It was too hard. And so I'm really curious about that. Because I do think we are all on a journey to get there. I feel like I've been going through that over the last couple of years. And how do you know when it's time?
I wish I could say like I had some, or I have some deep insight for like this is the light bulb moment. I don't think it was anything that necessarily profound, although, there is kind of almost a feeling of like emptiness or just like of a knowing that like, hey, I'm checking all these boxes of all the things I'm supposed to do, but it's still something's still missing, right? And it's like, okay, I can't put my finger on exactly what it is. And so for me, it really started with, coming out of that relationship saying, okay, well, something was really missing. And so I started to explore, dating men instead of women. And that kind of just felt more natural. And I think it was once you kind of lean into, okay, I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. Well, what am I missing there? How do I, really try to explore my whole self and kind of try different things, and I think that was really the key thing. But it was more than that moment. It was really what came after that, where it was like having conversations with my loved ones about, kind of what was going on with me personally, and then saying, okay, well, are you happy? And it was like, wow, that's love, right? Like nothing else matters. Are you happy? And let's continue with the conversation. And I think that reinforcement of my support system and structure. And obviously, some people, my relationships improved. Other people, aren't in my life now. And that was okay. But it took some time to come to grips with that. But I think having that positive reinforcement of like, we've got your back no matter what is really what helped. And then I think, to take that from my personal life into the work world, the challenge is always as leaders, we have to make decisions that are unpopular, right? And we have to sometimes hold up a mirror to the organization to say this isn't working. And that can be exhausting. But if you have that same kind of North Star guiding light that says, no, this is the path we're on and we need to commit to it, I think that helps. And so I think you almost have to have that confidence that I'm doing the right things for the right reasons. And there may be missteps along the way, but nothing's going to be so critical that we can't recover. I think that helps. And yeah, so it wasn't like a pivotal, like, oh my God, there was this day and time where I just had this epiphany. It was kind of a number of things that kind of built up, and frankly, I didn't see myself moving outside of Indiana, but I'm so glad I did. And I've already had other people in my life that are like, that have said, they see some of the things that I've done as inspirational to them, and are allowing themselves to live differently. And I think that that's really cool. But I do think the other end of the spectrum of acknowledging when you're exhausted, or when you're burnt out, or when you just need some time alone to recover. I'm, more introverted, so I do need that time alone to just rest and recover. That's important. And I think, finding a partner that understands and acknowledges that is also a major part of the equation. And I'm very blessed in that front. At work, we just went through a major kind of reorg, changing our company structure after, I think, about 20 years. So I would come home at night and I would just be exhausted. And so I would go and like watch TV by myself. And like my partner understands, like, that's what I need to rest and recharge. And there was one conversation we had where I was apologizing. I said, I realize I haven't been, as present in the or in the relationship as probably I would want to be. And he was like, well, don't apologize. Like, that's just what you need. And that's also a blessing. And so when I talk about, I feel like I'm living the dream, and having these experiences, I think that's a lot of it too, right? It's not necessarily, having these jet setting vacations, which, I am very blessed on that front to be able to travel. But it's, what happens at home in those kind of mundane tasks, that also kind of reaffirms that path.
So what I'm learning from your experience is the figuring out who you are is certainly a process. Yeah, it happens over time, doesn't it? And you start to peel back the layers, is what I hear you describing. But you're also giving us some strategies for doing that. That, I hear like trying new things, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I really, really resonated when you said, well, I've done everything I'm supposed to do and something's still missing. So you have to be in tune with what's happening inside of you to recognize that. Because I think sometimes societal messages around like, well, just be content with what you have. And you should be grateful for what you have. And I know that was something for me that tripped me up a long time. Like, gosh, I feel like I'm selfish. I feel like I should be so grateful, but gosh, something's missing. So talk a little bit more about that.
It is tough to think about that, but I think if you're not true to yourself, like, you can't really inspire the heart. And so I'm just keep thinking about this quote by Howard Schultz. A leader who inspires starts with the heart. How can you get others to connect with you, believe in you, and follow you if they don't first feel connected to you as a human being? And so if you yourself aren't connecting with like what's at your core and what's making you tick, how can you expect others to follow suit? So I think it is a fine balance where it's like, it's not about something material. And I think that's the other change. I think, in today's world where you have social media and you have people, kind of sharing these filtered versions of themselves, that's not authentic either. And so the reality is actually what's behind the scenes. And so um, for me, it's understanding that, like, there's really nothing in this world I need outside of those genuine connections and that love from the support system, and from having real connections. But when I think back to kind of who I was before, and when I was doing all the quote unquote right things, I do feel like there was a level of like superficialness in some of those relationships. And I think that is natural when you're wearing a mask, right? No one, you're not going to get to know each other. You're not going to truly build those deep connections if you're not authentic to who you are at your core. And so I think it does require that balance to really know yourself, and then to go from there.
Oh my gosh, it's such an important point. I want to just land here for a minute. So because what you're describing is when you aren't showing up as who you are hindering connection. You are hindering the very thing that you want.
And I think it's not always conscious, right? I think that's the other challenge is
But
like,
that's the thing, is we're looking outside of ourselves for that, right? What do they want? How do I show up in a way that makes them happy and fits into? And that's it's never going to work. Connection is never going to happen that way until like our soft underbelly is exposed and we are honest about what we want and need. Like that's when it happens. We have to risk, and it's not always gonna happen, but I don't know. That really hits.
I agree. And I can't remember who said it to me, but early on, I had someone in HR kind of mention something and it kind of became kind of my mantra, right? Like if we're not making someone unhappy in HR, we're not doing our jobs, right? At the end of the day, we can't please everyone. And our job is to look at the bigger picture and whether that's the future or the larger whole, there are going to be decisions that we have to make and someone's going to be unhappy. And that I was like, wow, that is so powerful. And I think when you think about it in that way, it does kind of change that calculus. About what do we do and what impact do we have on the world? Because I want my legacy to be one that is positive, that people look at and say, hey, the world is better because of, my interaction with Aaron or Aaron's input on a project or whatever that case may be. And you don't do that without change, which can be uncomfortable. And so I think then kind of you take a step back and say, okay, well, how do we, I talked about stepping outside of your comfort zone. How do you start to just dip your toe outside of your comfort zone so that when change happens, it's incremental and smaller. And so whereas my change was more of a metamorphosis in 2014, it's been incremental since then. And I think that is much more digestible, right? To make little steps day to day. But sometimes you do need that metamorphosis that kind of catalyzes the change and starts to lead to those different insights.
I so agree with that. Or for me, it's like sometimes the big bold step of just saying like I'm going. Something to really push you. I mean, it's hard, but that's
And I think it's most scary when you are comfortable, right? I mean, when it's like, well, no, everything is good and I could do this forever. But if you have that sense of something is missing, think about that and lean into your support structures too. I think that's the other piece of guidance that for me was so critical is that I had my own inner thoughts, but I had a support system. I had friends and loved ones who would say, okay, well, I hear you saying this, but what about that? And to be able to bounce those ideas around in a very safe, comfortable space and be vulnerable, I think that is important for change too, because I think you also potentially run the risk of like, okay, well, everything's not perfect. How do I invest, right? When is the juice worth the squeeze versus when do I want to change something wholesale? And I think today's society, again, with social media and kind of instant gratification, it can be easy to err on that other side of saying, well, this isn't perfect, so let me see what else is out there. But relationships take work, right? Like everything does take work. And so you have to kind of strike that balance of when is the discomfort actually productive and when is it counterproductive?
yeah, it's a really good point. And I want to talk a little bit more about leaning into your support system. It's yeah, so important. But one thing I have noticed in my experience is that sometimes my growth or my being honest about what I want and need makes other people really uncomfortable. I've always been like everything's great, so my family has really relied on me to be the steady good one. And so when I'm not good, like that makes people uncomfortable. Like, no, Andrea, you're always good. You're always okay. And so I think part of my growth has been in being okay with my support, not understanding. And I'm so grateful that I've got, some core people who do get me, where they are really soft places to land. But there's also been this discernment around like who's really supportive which has been hard because there are people that have been I've been really disappointed because I want them to show up for me so badly, but they're not capable of that.
Yeah, and maybe they're just not capable in the moment too. I think that's the other kind of thing that you have to just assess is, there are people who do have your back, but maybe more silent about it. Again, it is tough, right? We're dealing with people, and we all have other stuff going on the side. And I think that the challenge though is how do you embrace the fact that everything's not okay without amplifying that negativity, right? So it's like try to acknowledge what you're feeling without letting that permeate your relationships, and it is kind of a balance, and we're not always happy. This is really maybe a random example, but it really makes me think. A few weeks ago, my car got broken into. We had 11 cars on my street. Welcome to Philadelphia, where they broke in the windows, and I was sitting outside waiting for the police to show up with a couple other people whose cars were broken into, and one was this mother of a young child who was maybe, I would say, 7 or 8, and the child was like, he was frantic. This is terrible. And the mom was like, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I'm like, wow, look at her trying to like soften the blow for her son of like, it'll be okay. Daddy will come and take you to school. I'm going to stay here and figure this out. And it was just so touching that like we were all going through the same thing. And here she was holding it all together for him. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a mess, but everyone's safe. Like no one's injured. I hate that this happened, but like it's not the end of the world and it's just stuff. And I think having that perspective also helps a bit. But we're social beings, right? Humans like that social connection. And sometimes it helps to just have someone else, even, when it's them trying to relay that message to a child, that it kind of clicks that, okay, yeah, this isn't the end of the world. Yes, it's bad, but we're going to get through it, and it's not the end of the world, and we're all okay. And how do we move on from it? And so that was also just a really interesting experience, kind of across the board. And I even think about now, like the police still haven't resolved that. They're not even responding to my messages. But I'm like, there are bigger issues, right? This is not all about me. This is one thing that happened. And so what can I do, right? Can I put up more lights? Can I put up a security camera, right? What can I control? And how do I make those changes that are within my sphere of influence, of my sphere of control, rather than kind of dwelling on the things that I can't control or I can't influence?
Yeah, because you get to choose, don't you? Every single day what to focus on. Well, Aaron, I have been so fortunate to get to do thousands of podcast recordings over the last few years, and this is one of my all-time favorites. I love this. Thank you so much for showing up with an open heart and being willing to share your journey. And I have so many great takeaways. And I'm just so grateful how I feel like you really broke down for us. How do I figure out who I am so that I can be more of that? You talked about trying new things and incremental changes that are digestible and so those small win opportunities. You talked so much about leaning into your support network and those trusted advisors in your life and being vulnerable in those. I appreciate, the comment around relationships are superficial when you're wearing a mask. So being courageous enough to take it off and share what you really want and what you really need, because that's when connection happens. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been interesting, maybe a little terrifying going into it, but you've made it very, very comfortable. So I, as we talked about our intentions leading into this, right? I hope that it is inspirational, and that people, are able to really live their more true, authentic self through my story. And I'm happy to connect with anyone, who wants to chat more.
And you can find Aaron on LinkedIn. Is that the best place to find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is absolutely the best.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast to never miss a Being at Work story.